Hello and welcome to this month's Changer Chat. I'm your host, Courtney Govero. Joining me today are Grant Venable, Director of Be the Change Volunteers, and our very special guest, Raul Gonzalez. Raul is an amazing volunteer who has traveled with our teams to Puerto Rico as a translator on multiple occasions. His parents immigrated to the U.S. from Mexico, and he's a first-generation U.S. citizen. He has an incredible, inspirational story of the American dream. Raul is a career emergency medical technician, or EMT, working here in Kansas City for the fire department on an ambulance. His education has afforded him the ability to enjoy life, travel, be generous, and, like all the changers that we have, volunteer his time, treasures, and talents. Thanks for joining us today, Raul. Let's get going with this Changer Chat. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Very good. And Grant, always nice to see and talk to you.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me as well.
Fantastic. Let's jump right into the questions. I'm so excited to get to talk to Raul again. Raul, you have an amazing life story and perspective on education that I can't wait for our listeners to hear. Before we get there, why don't you share a little bit about how you learned about Be the Change Volunteers?
Well, I've been friends with Grant, the director of BTCV, about 20 years now, and he had gone to Puerto Rico to help his wife's friends from vet school in Puerto Rico, and he had managed to meet CP, who we work with in partnership in Puerto Rico and Utuado, and one of our projects and builds there. And Grant needed assistance with speaking Spanish and having someone readily available. Sure enough, I was on board. I was like, whatever you need, I'm there for you. And it was an experience like nothing I've ever experienced. Didn't think that it would turn out to be what I've experienced now, where I'm at now with the organization. I thought literally it was just logistics and speaking, but I was encouraged and was made a part of the team. That's how I came.
I know I've been to several different types of trips, and just having a translator makes all the difference, because even, we think we can slow it down. Maybe we can make out the right words, but in some of these situations, that's really hard. Grant, you're often in situations where you don't fluently speak the language. How important is it to you to have a translator on these trips? And what was it like having Raul with you on that trip?
Well, it's absolutely a game changer to have somebody who speaks the language and understands the culture, so that you're communicating not only efficiently, but appropriately. And Raul just made that possible for us. So whether you're in, the home of an older person, there's a behavior that you need to follow in Latin culture, or if you're trying to negotiate in the marketplace, it can be very difficult to figure out for the person you're trying to buy from what you want to buy if you can't, draw them a picture or speak the language. That's why having someone like Raul there was so important to us. It just has made navigating every project so much better. And he's a great team member too. So his career with the Kansas City Fire Department has, made him a team player by trade. And so that's been just vital to our teams.
That's great. Raul, in Puerto Rico, you have served several times now as a site evaluator and a team leader. Are there some unique stories you want to share about your trips to Puerto Rico?
I think the long-lasting one is the relationships that like a site evaluator gets to experience, is that you get to meet the people before the team does. And that's just an extra added benefit of being a team leader. So they're expecting you to come. When they see you, they know you. On all 4 projects or 3 projects that I've been on, when Grant has asked me to go as a site evaluator, that experience, the most definitely, is the personal relationships that you get.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about one of the projects you did there. What was one of the projects you did in Puerto Rico?
The most recent one that we did, where it was in Angeles, Utuado, which is by far the most smallest of all the towns that we had to build in. And not just because it's the last one that makes it more memorable and long lasting, but it's just how, I guess maybe because it was smaller and we were more confined, and this sort of the situation also because of COVID, the relationships bloomed and sparked even more. And not just this project, but other projects. The people see us come, and they're also sparked and motivated, and they want to dive in, and they kind of feel like left out if they don't participate, or they're like, but we want to participate too. And then just that's what we want as an organization, and that's probably the number one thing that's long lasting impression in me from all, not just all the trips or all the projects, but this one just as recent.
Yeah, this most recent one we had set up to do a playground, and the other thing that is so great about having Raul involved is I get the estimates in Spanish from a Spanish speaking contractor. Now I don't read Spanish or speak Spanish, so I can send those to Raul, and he literally just gets on the phone and can clarify so many things immediately for me. And of course, our partners at Unidos por Utuado do all the footwork and the vetting. But when it comes down to some of the details, it's so great to have someone on the team who can do that. And I love what Raul also said about how the community wants to get involved. That again is one of those things that we may not pick up on if we're all standing in the playground area talking about what we're going to do, and the principal and one of the teachers are speaking Spanish. They might be saying, man, we'd love to get the PTA here, but Grant doesn't know that because I don't speak Spanish. Raul may be able to pick up on those things and create those opportunities for connections that we truly want.
Fantastic. I love those stories. It's one of my favorite parts of the Change Your Chat is hearing about what you guys are actually doing and how you're really involved in the communities that you serve. And I love that Raul brought up the relationships, because I think that's really what Be the Change is about. It's that long-term aspect. Raul, you have also served in Uganda with the Be the Change volunteers. That was probably quite a bit different experience than Puerto Rico. Also, changing from being the team interpreter to needing a team interpreter was probably a real switch. Talk to me a little bit about the Uganda project and that experience in Africa. And what's your biggest takeaway from the trip to Uganda?
Well, after coming back from Utuado, from Adjunta, was my first project, and coming from Jimmy and Christy, and was speaking to me on the side and said, you're doing a great job. This is great, but I really need you to experience what BTCV is, and you need to go to Uganda. It's a real eye-opening experience. It's nothing like this, and you let me know, and we'll get you out there. And I just took it as passing and just saying, hey, we do more than just this in Puerto Rico. Just a little more. Compared to other projects, this is more touristy than, there's Home Depots on the street. There's all these amenities.
Burger King.
Whereas in Uganda, you forget something, and it's like an hour away back to the store. So, and I just took it as in passing, didn't really think twice about it. But Jimmy asked me again, and Grant asked me again, are you going or not? Like, I go, look, I just got back from Adjuntas, and financially I'm not able to go, but I mean, we could work something out. And sure enough, I was on the project again, and definitely was probably Jimmy's and Christy's biggest investment thus far within me, because I was hooked after that. Like, whether it was Puerto Rico or Uganda, totally different, opposite spectrums of culture, to economics.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it was education, it was children, and that's not, even though opposite as far as worldwide, but everywhere there's children, everywhere education is needed. So you could draw those parallels.
Absolutely.
They're interchangeable.
The mission is always the same.
Correct. Could have said it better myself.
Yeah, that was a great part of talking to Jimmy last time, was that he talked about that mission and how it translates even in every culture. Well, you've had an interesting life experience. Your life story should be a TV movie. You grew up as a first-generation U.S. citizen, and you shared that your parents immigrated here from Mexico to find work. Tell me a little bit about that story. Tell me about your parents coming to the U.S. and about you growing up. And you may want to share how many siblings you have, because I think that might surprise a few of us that thought we had big families.
Well, my mother was widowed at with 10 children in the early 70s, and my father was already here also in Chicago. And the different dynamics that I see, in my opinion, is that's very different. Is that usually, especially, I don't know, I can't speak for other countries, but in Mexico, in that era, in the 70s, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the men usually came to the United States and migrated, and then they would send for the family, send for their spouse to make their lives here. Well, that's the difference. The big difference about my family, how my parents met is that, like I said, my mother was already widowed. She had already been previously married, and my father was working here in Chicago and the United States, and that's how they became to meet. And then added three more children, so there's 13 of us, and that's a different dynamic, all of it in itself. But I'm the youngest of 13.
Now, you and your brother grew up the closest, the younger two of you two. And tell me a little bit about your education. Was education very important to you growing up? Were you just a stellar student ready to go?
No, my brother and I, yeah, we did grow up together. My sister also in Chicago, and we struggled a lot because in Chicago, it was the climate, it was just the surroundings, and it didn't help that my father at that time didn't value education as much as my mother did. So when you add all those components, it was a quick decision to not follow through with any type of education, formal education. It was easy for me, my father, to say, leave them in bed, let them sleep in. It doesn't matter. But what we didn't know is that how he grew up, that's how he grew up. And what was coming was we were going to get put to work. That was the eye-opening component that we didn't know about. We're like, oh yeah, dad won, dad won the argument against our mother. We don't have to go to school. That's awesome. But what we didn't know is that I'm 6 years old. My brother's 7, 8, and my sister is little, like another two, like 11 or 12. So that's the only thing that we didn't know. Is like, yeah, we were happy we didn't have to go to school, but what was coming, the rude awakening was we were gonna have to get up, go with him, and go to do, go looking for junk or whatever he did to make ends meet, or side jobs, painting, you know, trash pickup, laborious jobs. And my mother allowed it to continue for maybe a week or two, if that I can remember, and finally stood up to my father. Was like, I did not come to this country for my kids to be on the street working. They're going to go to school. And they had a big argument. But at the end of the day, from then on, all the way up to high school, the pushing, that's when not only my mom, but my older brothers and sisters constantly. And just, I can't thank them enough. I owe them a lot because they did that for me, for my brother. I can't even explain to you the battles that we went through just to get us to school, and it paid off. You don't know that as a kid why they're doing what they're doing, but you think they're being mean. You think that they're, they don't love you, but it's quite the opposite.
Right.
They do love you. They don't want you to be any less of what they can see, the value that they see within you. And that's the love that you finally realize at the end of the day.
Yeah, and your mom, when you shared those stories with me as a mom, I know what that's like to pull the kids out of bed. I did it this morning with the boys. I'm like, get out of bed. You're getting out of bed. There's no option here. No, you can't stay home. It's those kind of things. But what's interesting about when you shared that story was culturally what she did was very not normal. Like, she went up against your dad, and that was culturally out of norm and a high risk for her to do that. But it was because, and I think that's probably why you tie so much of your passion to education, because you saw that love that she did for you with education. So
right, yes,
she was incredible.
And this organization, it ties, like, it's funny how God tied my life into this organization because, yeah, I don't have any children, and I would most likely pass that on to my children, but I don't have that opportunity. But man, God gave me this opportunity to say, hey, I gave you this gift of education. Now share it with with the world, share it with other people.
Yeah. And you also shared with me that later you went to college, but eventually you decided that wasn't the right path for you. And I know you and Grant have had lots of conversations about that, but that choice took you down some rough paths because you didn't have a direction. You know, I think kids today, they don't think about what am I going to do when I graduate? And really it's college or a career. And you started college and you didn't have another path chose. Tell me a little bit about what happened in your life then, because that I think people will be shocked at how you got to where you're at right now.
Yes, I am still in awe that a 2.5 student got a full ride with with the work study components built into it. To me, it's the closest to a full ride that a 2.5 student GPA could get, and I just wasn't prepared. But I knew that that was the next step. That was the next. I had a brother that went to college, and I had, in the midst of all these things that we're speaking about, that I probably won't get to a lot as far as my younger years, but growing up, but I always wanted to surround myself, if I could just add that really quick, with people, successful people. You know, if you wanted to go to college, you wanted to entertain the thought of, like, if that's what your goal was in life, was to make money, blah, 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 you were surrounding yourself with people who were accomplishing that in life. So at the time, I was part of this organization here in Kansas City called HLOP and LULAC, and I surrounded myself with a bunch of brilliant Hispanic kids, men and young women, and they all went to college and they're all successful now too. But so I felt the pressure within that, like, okay, this was my next step, and I went to Penn Valley Community College, and but academically, I was just not prepared. I was prepared in the sense that I knew that this was the next step in my life to create more opportunities, to open more doors. I needed to get a 4-year degree, but mentally and academically, I was just, when you get there, I wasn't prepared at all. So it's okay to say that I failed, but life continues. And my mother would always tell me that too. She would always say, you know, when you move out, you're gonna find out what it is to live, because it's gonna be hard.
Right.
The bills are gonna come. Life is gonna move fast at you, so you better be ready or be prepared. And at least I had that in the back of my pocket, that, you know, whatever came my way, I was gonna have to, like, scramble to make ends meet in a positive way, not in a negative way always, because you could always fall into those things of negativity and criminal, mindset.
I mean, you ended up homeless there for a while too. I remember you were telling me you slept on the L, which if people
Correct.
in Chicago, that's their L train.
I was trying to make my way, trying to find my way in life. And yes, I chose to be homeless because I thought I didn't have anywhere else to turn. I exhausted all my resources with my family, and I slept in. Some gentleman gave me, that's another story. He gave me a car, and I'll never forget him for that. I slept in the car, in the L prior to that, and I had a nephew that got in trouble, and he needed me to drive him around, so that I got a car, and I was a chauffeur for a while. So stuff like that just came my way, and but at the end of the day, when I would be sitting there in the L or sitting in my car, like, there's more to me than this. I have to keep going. Like, I can't end up. My family did not come here. They didn't push me this far to end up like this, and I had to get up and have a plan and continue on, and that's what I did. I then eventually moved back to Kansas City to explain to my mom, like, yeah, I'm coming back, but I have a plan. I want to go to the fire academy. I want to be a firefighter, and that's where my third part of the story comes in.
Yep.
Hopefully not the end, but I'm still going. I got to go to work on Monday, but
Yeah, and it was your sister encouraged you to do that too, right? Your sister was part of that story, and you decided you should tell a little bit about that fire experience because you tried and it didn't work, right? And then you ended up, I love the part, and I don't want to spoil the ending of you were like, I'll do whatever. So tell that story because I loved that piece of the story.
yes, my brother-in-law he retired. He was a 32-year veteran of Chicago Fire Department. And my sister was like, why don't you go put in a card of interest, an interest card in, and try to get on the fire department. It's a go tech, they teach you everything. They put you in an academy. So I did, but big city like that, there's over 100,000 people applying for maybe 200 spots on the fire department. So that's why when I did all my research, how long it was going to take for me to get my EMT, possibly get my Fire 1 and 2, which is a certificate, basically just being able to have everything set and ready before I got hired on. Yes, I came back home and I tried. It was like the biggest failure because but I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I knew that that's what was my calling. And I went back and I got it. But you have to fight through. And then, so my friend Siler told me about cleaning ambulances and stocking them. So when I went, I was like, yes, I will do whatever it takes to get an EMT spot because you can bump over. They'll take you first if you want to go on to become an EMT. So I did that and it's paid off.
That is the most, I loved that. When we talked the first time, that just was, you said, I knew I wanted to do whatever it took and I would clean those ambulances, which I don't know if anybody has ever seen an ambulance after it's been used, but it's pretty nasty. And you went in and you would do whatever it took. And it got you great rewards because you have moved your way up and you own your own home. I mean, to go from where you were to where you are now is pretty incredible. And the fact that you chose to give back. I mean, that's what being a changer is not only do you have this incredible life story, but you chose to give back and not in just a little way. You've gone on several trips. You've helped Grant with lots of different projects and you've helped the team. So I just think that's an incredible thing, but it really lends itself to your passion. And this was the part that almost had me in tears. It did have me in tears the first time we talked. But you had made a statement that I think that listeners need to hear, and I would love for you just to kind of talk about it. So you had said in these countries, education isn't just a nice to have, it's a matter of life and death, and how you had talked a little bit about how here in the US we take it for granted. Share with me a little bit about that statement, because it is, to me, it's the mic drop statement of the Be the Change volunteers, and it's your story, your passion.
Yes, definitely coming back home from builds, you have that amount of time on a plane or in the airport where you're just soaking it all in. And I just had an epiphany of how I'm one generation removed from some of these projects, some of these countries, some of these students out there in developing countries. I mean, the only difference that when I say life and death is because here I did feel that way at times, but I knew that but at the end of the day, I had safety nets, which was either my family. I'm a product of welfare through our government. I had that safety net. I had the safety net of the goodwill of people and places of faith. So we have all these opportunities, all these different avenues, all these whatever adjective you want to place on it, but we have all these security nets here that will catch you. It was my understanding that once they catch you have the power to take that help and make it into something. If they prop you up on your feet, are you going to walk again or are you going to sit down again? And you're going to sit down a lot. But at the end of the day, it's what are you going to do to get back up? And when you go to Uganda, when you go to in Puerto Rico, granted it is part of the United States, but it still has that resonance of being left behind.
Mm.
Are you going to be left behind, or are you going to do something? And they also have their safety nets, their families. They're going to push their children. They're going to push themselves to, to survive. And just education is that tool that we have that's going to give you that leg up to survive and to eat and to drink and to live another day, to have shelter over you, because it's a hard, I could say it now at 44, it was a hard life. It's a hard, when you're out there and you think you're alone, they could do stuff to you, like mentally. I sympathize and empathize with homeless people, but it's what you do. For me, is like what did I do to get back up?
Yeah.
It was a matter of life and death.
We're fortunate that we have this is a Zoom call. The audience won't get to see the video, but I'm just listening to your story, Raul, and what they don't see is that you're sitting on your porch with the 1 acre of land that you own wooded behind you. And you just have this amazing home, this amazing property today because of your resilience and your work and your courage to continue. And just speaking for BTCV, that's why we love having you as a translator and as a team leader, because you are a walking version of a change your story, man.
Thank you.
Well, this has been fantastic. Raul, that was the story I was looking for there at the end. I was talking to a friend of mine that works for Kansas City, Missouri Public Schools, and she was talking about a home visit that she had to do on a student that hadn't showed up to school. And I thought of you. I told her about you because I said, he had said what you had said. To me, that is exactly what Be the Change is. And you're part of that vision and that story. And Grant, so are you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate Grant getting on with us, even though we didn't chat with him too much.
Well, I'm so grateful to have been here, and I love hearing Raul's story. It's very inspiring.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Courtney.
We hope you enjoyed this Change Your Chat, and we invite you to join us next time. If you like Change Your Chats and want to hear more, let us know with your financial support at www.btcv.us. Thank you, and be the change.